Did he give you an update?
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty. Welcome to episode 1 of Travel Tuesday with one of my best friends in the world, Lexie Lee. And a little backstory. Me and Lexie met in Puerto Rico, and within like 24 hours of meeting, we booked the trip to Colombia and made that happen. And then fast forward like, 6 months?
Yeah.
6
6
months.
months.
We met in Colombia. We were going to do a workaway together, but that kind of fell through. But we ended up backpacking, and then we took a spontaneous trip to Peru, hiked to the top of Machu Picchu together, and just had some epic travel stories. And she has traveled all over the world, and she is a solo female traveler. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, is just the stereotypes and the fears, and if it's true, if it's not true, how to be safe if you do want to travel and you're a female to foreign countries. So, welcome,
Woo!
Lexie Lee.
Hi.
Right.
I'm
So
so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So first off, Beer Girl. Her other nickname is Beer Girl. So first off, explain how you got into traveling, when you got into traveling, and all of that.
That's a loaded question. I don't even really have a moment that I knew that I wanted to travel. I can't really remember. I knew in college I had a dream to study abroad, and I made that happen. That was like my biggest goal throughout college, was to study abroad. And I never had really traveled anywhere, but for some reason I just had this like intense desire. Like I really felt like I needed to do this so badly.
The Wanderlust.
Yeah, I really did have that. So
So
I
how old were
studied
you then?
I was 20.
Okay.
So I had planned and prepared for that for like a year prior. So I think that once I got to college, my mind was opened by new experiences and meeting new people. I knew that I needed to get out and travel and see the rest of the world, because just from going to college 2.5 hours away from where I grew up, I was like so mind blown just by that. So I was intrigued to see the rest of the world.
Right.
I think
So your
that's what
first
started
experience
it.
when you were 20.
Yeah.
And you
Wait, what'd
studied
you
abroad
say?
where? You studied abroad?
Oh, I studied abroad in Granada, Spain, which is in the south of Spain. And then that really kick-started my travels. I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to travel to 12 other countries throughout my time studying abroad, which was so amazing and so great. And it's still some of my favorite memories that I have.
Did you
And
study abroad by yourself?
yeah, so I didn't know anybody.
So that was your first little bit of solo travel.
Yes, I got on the plane to go to Spain, and I truly knew no one, even that was going to be in my study abroad program or anything.
Did that make you nervous or exciting or?
Um, no, I was so excited. I always say that that day that I got on the plane was truly like the best day of my life, because that was like, it opened just like a Pandora's box for me of like where my life was to go, and it changed my life in so many ways besides just getting to travel to other places and meeting new people. It truly changed like my whole perspective on life and how I wanted to live my life.
Do you think studying abroad is a good place to start for someone that has never done it but wants to?
Yeah,
Wants to
I think studying abroad is a great place to start, just because um I was I went alone, but I made friends quickly because I had other Americans in my study abroad program that were
Yeah,
in the same boat as me.
you're instantly
So,
community.
yeah, so we were kind of like forced to be friends together, but it's so funny because they really are some of my best friends to this day
Right?
now, 4
Isn't
years later.
it happens?
Yeah, but I think that's a great place to start, and you can meet other people that are like-minded. You know, if someone's studying abroad, they definitely are into traveling and want to explore. So that's a really good start, I
Right.
think.
What do you think the benefits are? Because this is something I experienced. What do you think the benefits are of going by yourself and not knowing people versus going to study abroad or going to travel with the group of people that you already know?
Oh, this is such a good question too, because I've traveled alone a lot, but I've also traveled with other people a lot, and both are so amazing, but they're just such different experiences. I think the benefits of traveling with someone is obviously you get to make memories with someone that's really hopefully important in your life if you're traveling with them.
Right.
And having someone to do things with is cool. But I just think that there's something so special about traveling solo that pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And for me, really, it sparks this sort of like growth as a person for me to feel uncomfortable and not know anybody and kind of be forced to meet people and do things on my own. And it's when I've made some of the best friends I've had in my life and when I've had some of the most incredible experiences. And I think there's something really special to be said for sharing an experience like just for yourself. Like I think it's really important to know yourself really well and to like have special moments just with yourself, and that comes a lot from studying abroad. And I mean, not studying abroad, traveling solo.
Yeah, traveling.
But yeah.
So after after your study abroad and you traveled all about Europe, I'm assuming, was it the 12 countries?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So where did you go after that? What did it look like? How did your travels continue?
So when I got back from studying abroad, the only thing on my mind was where I was going to go next, how I was going to get to travel next. And I was still in college, so I had a year of college, and I was so lucky that my roommate throughout college, she was super into traveling too. So we took a few trips together, her and then a few of our other friends throughout college, mostly to places in Central America and Central and the Caribbean on like breaks that we had. We both were waitresses in restaurants, so we were always saving up like every dollar we had and booking trips like last minute, trying to squeeze in trips here or there. So I was lucky to have her.
Really quickly.
Yeah.
How do you manage the finances of traveling? Everyone seems to think it's so expensive. I've had a different experience, and I know you have a perspective on that as well.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of that question is just that it's whether you prioritize it or not. And for me, it was always something that was a top priority in my life was to travel. So I was going to make it work. But secondly, I think there's a huge misconception that traveling is super expensive, and it can be, but especially for young people like us who are staying in hostels, and it's actually the exact opposite.
Right.
The hostels are super cheap and they're so much fun and you meet so many people.
Right.
There's always a cheap way to do everything, which you can find on the internet too.
Yeah. What are some of your other than staying in a hostel? Are there any other things you do to save money when you travel?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because people see that I travel a lot and they think that it's like so luxurious and amazing, and they see my pictures which look that way. I know you can relate to this too, but some of the ways I save money during traveling are I definitely don't do a lot of tours just because those can be expensive. I always research like cheap things to do in cities, and another great thing that comes with when you stay in hostels is you meet other people who are solo traveling, trying to travel for cheap, and you always find cheap ways to do things by meeting people, and they'll give you the scoop on like what to do, how to do it. And I skip meals.
and you make sure to always take the high class buses, right?
Like yeah, a lot of really fancy buses, cheapest buses possible, even if they're like 12 hours long.
Sitting next to someone who snores and
yeah.
Yeah. So back to the hostel. So at this point, you were like 21 years old, by yourself in Central America. Well, you were with a friend. Or were you by yourself?
Yeah, I was with some friends. Yeah.
Okay. When was your first experience totally by yourself, other than the study abroad?
Oh, this is a good story too. So my first experience truly traveling solo was a road trip in the United States, and which actually got me in a lot of trouble because I told my parents that I was not traveling alone because my mom was deathly afraid that I was she was so afraid of me traveling alone. That was my first experience, and I did a road trip for 10 days across Utah, Colorado, and Arizona. I did a lot of national parks and hiking and I stayed in hostels, and I really had no plan. I rented a car, and I didn't even know if there were hostels around. I just went.
I love it.
And that was like, again, one of the most amazing 10 days of my life. And I learned so much about myself and so much about just everything in general. I journaled a lot. I ate alone a lot. And the other thing about traveling in the US is there's not as many hostels. So hostels weren't as like packed as they are in South America or Europe or other places like that. But it was a really great time for me, just like self-exploration and learning
Oh, yeah.
about myself and seeing so many amazing sights. That was like so awesome.
Heck yeah. That leads into a thought. What is it like staying in hostels as a girl when you're by yourself and you don't really know anybody when you show up?
Um, so it's definitely like, of course, I love traveling more than anything in the world, and I always recommend it. I love hostels more than everything, but the thing about traveling is it's not always like super comfy or like super, like I'm not always happy all the time. Like it is a little bit uncomfortable sometimes when you walk into a hostel first and you know nobody, and you walk
Right.
into your dorm room and you get in your bed. And but I think I'm lucky because I am super outgoing most of the time, so I don't mind talking to other people, which I think definitely comes in handy. And also, nothing's really weird for me. So, and you'll realize that as soon as you get to hostels, that nothing's weird. Like,
Yeah, isn't it? It's like so hard to explain, but it's like, and will you give like a quick, we can like tag team this, but a quick
yeah,
explanation of what a hostel is like, and yeah, like from your perspective, like when you walk into a hostel, what is the energy like, and is it weird? Do you feel danger? Like, what do you feel?
yeah. I mean, you could definitely help me with this question. I think that people hear the word hostel, and there was like some movie that was made about
Yeah,
it.
never seen it, but that's all
Me
that I hear.
either. I
No
get
people
like
get killed
gasps
in
from
hostels, and I'm
people.
like, never in my experience.
Yeah, people are like, oh, a hostel. But um, they're so awesome. They're the best. You walk into a hostel normally, and there's normally a young person that's either living there or working there that's running the hostel. And they greet you and they get you set up with a room. Another great thing about hostels is most of them have events, or they'll have like a bar for social settings or events that they do to try to get their guests all together to meet each other and interact. Bar crawls, free tours. So it's honestly so much fun, and it's cool because everybody's kind of in the same boat of not really knowing anybody, so everybody's really eager to talk and share stories and tips about traveling. So
Right.
that's my experience.
Yeah, I've had the same experience, and one thing I'll say is for anybody out there who wants to travel and stay in hostels, especially girls, I mean, you can back me up on this, but if you feel like you're going to be out of place or in danger or anything, when you get to hostels, you'll realize everyone thinks like you. Well, for the most part, like almost everyone will get along. They'll respect your beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
the way you do life, and they'll become some of your best friends. And I remember calling my grandma like 2 days after I got to my first hostel, and I was like, "This is the first time I've ever felt so at home and so connected to everyone." And she was just like, "Yeah, when you do what you love, you're gonna find other people in your same boat." And I had that experience almost the whole time I was in hostels. And the cool thing is you can look on Hostel World and do all the reviews. So I mean, obviously, you're not going to want to stay in a hostel that has 10 reviews and they're all horrible. So do your
Yeah,
research.
do your
Uh,
research, of course.
if you see it and it's like an old creepy guy runs it and no, there's never any guests and it's boring, like
Yeah,
probably won't
definitely
choose that
steer
one.
clear.
But a lot of the ones I know that me and Lexi stayed in South America, they were all like called like party hostels, kind of, which is super duper fun, and you'll feel so at home and meet your best friends like every single night. You're gonna have a new group of
Yeah,
best friends.
I
Um,
love that. Yeah, I think that's so true that when you do something that you really love, you're going to find yourself being surrounded by people that also feel the same way about things you do. And I think that's a really special thing about hostels. It is a true that it has such a special energy.
right, and it's
But
crazy.
yeah, yeah. But also another thing I wanted to add is definitely do your research. Don't just see a sign for a hostel and walk into the hostel. I know we both always use hostelworld.com, and that's the best. It gives you reviews, ratings on everything from security to atmosphere to location. So I would definitely recommend using Hostel World to book any hostels that you're looking to stay at.
And getting back to our main topic, what would you say for a girl that's listening that has never traveled outside of the country, wants to do the backpacker thing? What are some
Mm-hmm.
things she should look into and research before making a decision on where to go, where to stay, and how to do things?
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this. I think a lot of people come to me with questions because I've traveled alone, and especially as a girl, a young girl who has blonde hair and is American, it can be, it can sound a little bit daunting. I think the first tip that I always tell people is right off the bat is that it's not for everybody, and that's okay. It really isn't. Some people, it's just not for them, and that's okay. And there's no shame in that. I have a lot of friends that love to travel and have traveled a lot, but the solo travel thing just isn't for them, and
Right.
that's okay. And if you really think about it and you really think this is something that's not for you, then I wouldn't go for it, and that's perfectly fine. But
Right.
if you are thinking about it and it's something that you really are interested in and want to do, um, I think the first thing you should do is just fucking do it. Don't think. Don't think about it. I remember when I booked my first solo trip, I was really nervous. I was
Yeah.
super scared. I was nervous I was going to be feeling really lonely. I was nervous that I wasn't going to like meet anybody or that I was going to get lost and like what was I going to do if this or that happened. But I think those were just some fears that were creeping in, and I just booked it and it worked. It always, me and you always say this, it always works out
Always.
because it's going to work out. And I think you should just do it. Do your research, book a hostel that looks safe and has good reviews, plan a little bit, but definitely don't plan too much. And I think definitely as a female traveler, something that I've learned is even though like traveling is so much fun and it's like a great adventure for me, when I'm traveling alone, especially as a female, I am always on my guard, which
Yeah.
it might not seem like it to people. And I think me and you have shared different experiences with this, and we've talked about this a little bit throughout our travels, is that like I'm the most friendly, outgoing person, but when I'm traveling alone and I'm alone in somewhere, if I'm trying to get from point A to point B or traveling or on a bus or on a plane, I purposely sometimes kind of try to come off as not so friendly because I don't want to be taken advantage of.
Right.
And also, I'm a super go with the flow kind of person, and I'm not a planner. But when I travel alone, um, I do plan a little bit when it comes to the actual traveling part to try to
Which,
stay safe.
yeah, which I think is much more important for a girl, just because
Yeah.
it's the way it is. That's why I wanted to hear your perspective, because from my perspective, as you know, I never plan anything.
I know. I remember we had one conversation. I think we were in Colombia, and you were like, "It's so great. Like, if you just smile at anybody on the street, like, it's crazy. You can meet so many people." And I was like, "I literally never do that when I'm just walking alone on the street when I'm solo traveling." And you're like, "Why not? You're so friendly." And I'm like, "Because I'm a girl. Like,
Right.
I don't want to come off as easy
Too
to take
friendly.
advantage of in any
Right.
way." So I think
And
that's
I
something that's
like,
definitely on my guard all the time.
yeah, I think that's an important point for any girls listening or guys listening. You'll build the awareness as you go. You just need to start doing it. But like from my first trip to, I mean, just like a week into my first trip, like you'll start picking up on things like, just as if you're at home, whatever city you live in, there's bad parts of the city, and you know to avoid that. You'll feel the energy in those
Hmm.
places, and you'll be like, okay, I probably shouldn't be here, or this looks like it could be trouble, and then you'll know kind of where to stay and where not to. And like we were talking about staying in hostels, you'll hear and meet so many people that have already been living there for months or been staying there for a while, and they'll be like, "Hey, go hang out in this area, go this place." So that's
Yeah.
one other positive about staying in hostels.
Yeah, that's something to add to the safety thing is that's one of the first questions I always get when people hear that I've traveled solo is, "Oh my God, like did you feel safe? How did you stay safe?" And or my parents will always say like, we're so nervous for you. We trust you, but we don't trust other people. And my response to that is always that I trust myself to be able to navigate certain situations like that. And I trust
Right.
my instinct. And that's something that I really firmly believe in. It's crazy because if you've never experienced it, it's kind of hard to understand. But when you're in a foreign country or somewhere by yourself and you're forced to be smart, it's amazing how much you pick up on.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I trust myself to be able to navigate situations like that. When I meet someone who seems a little bit off, or if I'm in an area that I all of a sudden don't feel super safe in, I trust myself to be able to get out of those situations.
Right.
And yeah.
All right, and then a few more questions, but one that I want to get into. What is your most memorable and inspirational story from a solo trip by yourself in a foreign country? Go.
Oh my God, that's so much pressure.
Or
Um,
something that just like was super duper impactful on your life and your growth and your journey.
I think my first solo travel trip was probably um, the biggest period of growth for me, just
The
because
one
it was
in Spain?
no, it was when I traveled the U.S. Well, Spain was just that. That's just we could have a whole other podcast just on what I learned and how I grew from when I studied abroad, just because I was like so innocent and young when I stepped on that plane. And by the time I left, I had learned so much and grown as a person and learned so much about myself and where I wanted to take my life after those 6 months I spent in Spain. Like I just had a completely different perspective on every single aspect of life after that. So that was by far the most monumental travel experience in my life. And I don't know if anything will ever top that just because of how much I grew as a person. But that's just like,
Too
if
much.
I had to isolate it to one certain trip, I think the first solo trip that I took by myself was in the US was really, really eye-opening. It was something that I wanted to do for so long, and I had a lot of people who were telling me that I shouldn't do this, that I'm not allowed to do this, that I can't do this, that I'm dumb, and I did it anyway. And I'm so glad that I did, just because I proved to myself that I could, and to all
Right.
of those other people, and it made me proud of myself that I was able to do that, and it made me trust myself more, and I was able to go forth with a lot of other trips from there, knowing
Right.
that like I could handle this and I could do it. And that's besides a lot of personal growth that happened and like amazing things that I saw, and
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
So I know you had probably had this experience as well as I did. What was it like at that beginning phase when you're getting ready to take your first trip by yourself and everyone was telling you not to do it? And what was it like just deciding? Like how did you get past your parents or other people that were telling you not to do it?
Um, I
Or
think something that I have, which I think you have too, is I have like a fire in me. When someone tells me not to do something, it like lights a fire in me to want to do it so much more. And I had a lot of people telling me not to travel alone, even though it was something that I'd been thinking about and really dreaming of doing for a really long time. And whenever I brought up the idea with anybody, almost anybody, they were really hesitant to agree with me on my decisions to do it. And that just made me wanted to do it so much more. And I was like, I can do this. I know I can do this. So that was really where I got my inspiration from. And once I did it, it was so worth it. And
so life changing, yeah.
yeah.
Did you ever have that? I know I had this where I was like in my beginning stages, I was always looking for someone to do it with me. But then it was like,
Mhm.
oh, I can in 3 months. Oh, I can next year. I can. And
Mhm.
like for a long period of time, like I kept pushing mine back until the point I was just like, all right, I'm done waiting on anybody. I'm doing it by myself. Did you have that?
Yeah, I love that about you. That's so awesome. Definitely. I think I dealt with that with my parents a lot because I had been expressing to them that I really wanted to travel. Um, I wanted to travel, and they were saying, find a friend, do it with a friend. And I was lucky that I did have a few friends who were able to travel with me throughout college. Um, but it got to the point where I was wanting to travel on a more frequent basis than they wanted to, or for a longer period of time. So yeah, I definitely had the same experience. where people just weren't able to travel, and I had tried to find people to travel with, but they couldn't do it. But also at the same time, I was really intrigued from the beginning by the idea of traveling alone. And I thought that was like super badass, and I wanted to try it. So
Right.
I did actually have that thought from the beginning that I did want to try to do a trip alone, and for a while I didn't know if I could do it. And after a few years of thinking about it, I did realize like it's something that I want to go through with and really try. So
Right. It was like a blessing in disguise for me. I would still be waiting to this day. I would have never traveled if I was waiting for someone.
yeah, of course. I feel the same exact way. Yeah, I would have gone to like a quarter of the places that I've traveled to if I had to wait to do it for people to travel with me.
Right. And then something I want to say is like once you do your first trip, I'm telling you, like, we have our little thing called the Mango Crew or Mango Family, and it's like at any moment I could text someone in that group and go travel with them. So like all you have
Yeah.
to do, take your first trip, and I'm telling you, you'll have people all over the world ready to travel with you whenever you want. Um,
Yeah.
and then, okay, so coming back, I want to relate this to people that are in your similar shoes. So for like a young American girl who wants to travel abroad, where where are some places that you've been that you would recommend starting? That's not too crazily like out there and like uncomfortable,
Mhm.
but like a good place where it's like they get you some culture, you'll meet a lot of amazing people, but you don't feel so out of place.
Yeah. Um I think trips in the US are great. The only downfall about them is there's not a ton of hostels, and I think the hostel experience in the US just isn't really the same as in a lot of other parts of the world. I think that Central America and the Caribbean is a really good place to start because it's not super far from the US. There's tons of hostels, tons of fun people that are traveling just like you. And there's a sense of familiarity just because it's not that far away from home.
Right.
And a lot of countries in Central America, you're able to find people who speak English relatively easy.
Yeah. Did you ever find
So
any
I
issues?
think that's a really good start.
I'm gonna come back to that. So, do you have any specific countries first off the top of your head in Central America or Caribbean?
Um, yeah, I did Belize, and Belize was really fun.
And
Belize
they
is a
speak
small,
English.
yes. So everybody in Belize speaks English. Like 90 something percent of people speak English, which was super helpful. It's fun. It's a super small country, so it's easy to get around. I also did a few other countries in Central America and um, or the Caribbean. They were awesome. Guatemala was amazing. Mexico's the best. So much fun to go to. There's so many places to see in Mexico that are so beautiful. Those are some recommendations that I think are really good.
Okay.
But also do your research because there's also places in Central America right now that aren't super safe. So, of course, do your research and you'll be good.
Yeah. And then what was my other question? What was I about to say? I can't remember.
I wanted to say that traveling alone is like by far the best experience I've had in my life, but I don't want to give the idea that traveling alone every day is like a dream and that like every single day I wake up and I'm around people that are now my best friends and I'm on a beach and I'm doing this or that. Like that's not how it goes a lot of the times, but it doesn't mean that it's not amazing. I don't want people to solo travel because they like listen to you or me or this podcast or whatever and think like, oh, I didn't have this experience they had where every day was like the best day ever all the time.
Right.
There's
Yeah,
I think that's the beauty of it, and sometimes you don't realize until the end of the trip that like the
right.
trying moments were like either end up being really funny memories and stories or they teach you a lot. There are a lot of times where like things go wrong and
Yeah.
like this gets canceled or like you missed this bus or this hostel is booked and now where the fuck am I going to stay tonight? Like there are moments like that that are stressful or there are moments of loneliness sometimes
100%
or
loneliness.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important to note that like traveling alone isn't a dream, but I think that those moments of like not so high moments are the moments that really count in the end, and like those are the moments where you really grow as a person, and like I value those moments just as much as I value like the highs of my trips,
Right.
because that's where you really learn a lot about yourself and end up having sometimes some really funny memories to look back on too. And you're like, how the fuck did I get through this situation? That was so weird and crazy. But yeah, I think that's really important to touch on too. Solo traveling in general for women and men. But yeah. Are you with me? All right, now I can hear you. What happened?
My phone died. Are
I
you?
knew you were gonna say that.
All right. We'll get back. I remembered exactly what you were saying. You were talking
Okay.
about how it wasn't super. It's not always super glamorous. Did you have anything else to say on that?
Yeah,
Just
I just want to, like, as a wrap up, I think that the important thing is to not go into a solo trip thinking that like every moment is going to be so much fun and like everything's going to go perfectly and I'm going to meet a million people at every place I stay, because that's not what's going to happen.
right,
And things are going to go wrong. You are going to feel a little bit lonely sometimes. You might not meet like the best friends of your entire life every time you stay at a different hostel, but like I think overall, when you look back on your solo experiences, the hard times definitely are just as important as the really fun and amazing times too. And
right,
that's why solo travel is so special, because
right,
like some of those hard times of loneliness you don't always have when you're traveling with other people.
right. I can 100% relate to that. And I was actually talking to Casey today, and we're gonna do an episode on the struggle of Peru and just all, all of the hardships and yeah. But I'm happy you said that because yes, to anybody that's listening, it's not always super amazing. I say it always is because I don't know, I just have a weird super positive outlook on life. But if you look back at my journal, there was like weeks at a time when I was in Spain and other countries where every single day was just like, I can't wait to be out of here. And you can even ask Lexie, like in Peru, I think every day I woke up, I was like, I can't wait to be home. But like surrounded by my best friends and like meeting new people all the time. But there's definitely gonna be some times when you're just like over it and you want to be back home in your comfort because it is like always uncomfortable. Like every day you wake up, if you choose to do the hostel life, you're in a room with people that you may not know. There's going to be
Yes.
nights when people are snoring all night long. There's going to be nights when you have super loud roommates and you don't sleep, and then the whole next day you're grumpy, and that could go on for days in a row. So sometimes you just hit a wall, and like, uh, yeah, it'll show in your emotions and your physical feel. Sometimes I'd have to get an Airbnb and just like chill out for like 4 days by myself and just sleep because I was so over people and like
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's definitely for like long-term travel. If you're looking to long-term travel. If you're looking to short-term travel, then you're probably able to just like suck it up for like a week or a week and a half and like deal with the hostels then. But yeah, definitely if you're long-term traveling, you're definitely going to deal with like a few days at a time of periods of like, fuck, I can't sleep.
right,
Or
there's
like,
yeah, damn, there's so many different topics we could go into.
I know. Yeah,
I'm
there
like
really is.
everything you say, I'm like, dang, that could be its own like hour long thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to wrap this up, back to question one. So for a girl that wants to travel, the answer is just do it.
Just fucking do it. I think that's the best advice I can really give anybody. Like I said in the beginning, if it's something that you feel like super scared of and you don't think it's for you, definitely don't do it. But if it's something that intrigues you and you're really interested in, or it's something you really want to do, just fucking do it. Don't think about it too much. Of course, do a little bit of research, um, pick a place, but do it. And I promise you it will be worth it. And it'll be probably one of the best experiences of your life, and it could be a catalyst for a lot of other amazing things in your life, like it has been for mine. So
Do you have any recommendations for someone? Because from my experience, like you said, there's the ups and downs, and I met plenty of people
Mhm.
who started out their first ever solo trip on a down. They had a bad experience. What
Yeah.
what would you recommend for somebody who that happens? Say they're like finally take that leap, and then they get to a place and they have all these expectations, and then it's like not what you expected.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that one of the realities could be that like you think maybe solo traveling's for you and maybe you get there and it's just you just don't like it as much as you thought you would, and that's completely okay too. I think that we've both probably met some people that were on solo trips and we're just like, I'm just not liking this. Like, I would rather be with like my friends or something that I knew, and that's completely okay too. I don't want to take away from the fact that like some people don't like solo traveling and that's okay. It doesn't make you like not a cool traveler or like this or that, whatever. But I think that if you get yourself in a rut, I think that's definitely happened to both of us a lot of times when we travel. If I'm in a
Right.
rut of like not really meeting any people for a few days, or like I'm having a bad hostel experience, or I'm just in a bad mood, I switch up my location. I'll go somewhere else. If I'm on a long-term trip, I'll go to a different city. I'll find a different hostel that has better reviews. I think the most important thing is to like just get out from where you are and find a
Right.
different environment, a different hostel, a different city, somewhere else. And I think just a different location changes a lot,
Right.
um, and can change your perspective and your mood and all that good stuff. So
And I
that's
think
what I do.
right, and I totally agree with that. And I think one thing that helped me was just becoming aware with myself. Because
Hmm.
going into it, I was like, I knew I wanted to travel, but I didn't know what type of hostels I liked, what type of culture I liked, if I liked the beach, if I liked the mountains, if I liked the mix, if I liked the party city.
Yeah.
So you'll start taking note on like when you feel certain ways, it's like, okay, it's time to go do this. You'll definitely start to learn like if you're feeling super like excited and up and stuff, then it's like, okay, now I know what type of hostel to go to or what type of place to go
Hmm.
to. Or if you're feeling like, all right, I'm super tired. What the hell is going on? If if you're super tired or like need alone time or something, you'll learn like with experience. And that's the only way you'll get it. You can listen to us and watch and read all the books like I did and listen to people for a long time, but you'll learn so much and your like growth will be exponential once you just take that leap and do it. Right?
Do it. Yeah,
Yes.
I definitely agree.
So cool. Well, that was a good like first one, and
I loved it.
I'm sure we'll have many more to come. You, Casey, and Carol should get on one and just do one on like the ups and downs of our Peru trip.
Yeah, I
'Cause
would love to do that.
I
I think
think
that's a
that
really good trip to talk about. Like now when we look back, we laugh and we had the best times, but like when it was actually happening, we had so many moments of defeat.
I have no I have no idea who this is. I don't know what he's saying. He likes.
Oh my
Repeat
god.
what you said. Sorry, it was
Oh, I said that.
distracted.
I just said that's okay. I said that would our Peru trip would be cool to talk about just because we look back and we all laugh now and like we did have like so many funny great times, but when it was happening, we had so many moments of like what the fuck and like why is this
What
happening to us, or
the
like
whole
cranky days, or like we had
day?
but it was still so much fun. But I think that's a good trip to talk about like what to do when like things aren't going right.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
So anybody listening, just do it. And if you have any questions or want a little push, feel free to message either of us.